Well, this is great. I feel like we've been talking about this subject for a long time, life groups and getting together, and it's really good to see. I just kind of did a little quick head count. I think we're sitting about 80 or 90 people. I think we had about 110 signed up, so that's a really good first showing. We're excited to see the numbers multiply, actually, as you launch into your homes. And so we're just going to take a few minutes here to discuss a few things, go over the small group guidelines and so on, so we're all talking the same language. The purpose of small groups is to help people grow in spiritual maturity and relationship. So as fun as it is to just get together and hang out and build relationships, that's really great. But we're not doing this just so we can have that warm feeling of having good friends. The primary purpose really is that we would encourage one another, that we would help each other grow spiritually. Matthew chapter 4, verse 19, Jesus said, and he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Jesus modeled the small group scenario really well throughout his ministry. And that first thing in that verse, the "follow me," is kind of this head decision, a decision to follow Christ. And then the second part is "I will make you." There's this transition that God is transforming us. And he's changing our heart, he's changing our thoughts, he's changing the way we see the world around us and the way we react to circumstances. And then the last one is he will make us fishers of men, where we get on mission with him. There's a purpose, the Great Commission, to go out and make disciples for the kingdom, who go out and make more disciples. And so that's really our heart cry with small groups, is that we would be coming alongside one another and really cultivating this verse. Because truth is we might have the head knowledge on certain things. We might actually be in different places at different times in regards to this verse. So for instance, you might be somebody who's really generous with your money and giving for the Lord in your money for the kingdom, but you might really struggle with being generous with your time and giving to people. And so you've got the head knowledge of it, but it hasn't really translated to the heart and to the hands yet. And so it's not just the issue of salvation, it's a lot of these other things, these fundamental things that we walk through in life, where it's getting from our head to our heart to our hands and fleshing out in our life. And that's what's great about a life group, is we can come together and we're all in different places. We're all in a different spot, a different place in our journey. And there can be somebody that can encourage us, that can lift us up, that can pray for you. And we can engage in life together, growing together spiritually. And ultimately, multiplying. The goal isn't to just get stronger and keep it to ourselves. The goal is to multiply. And so we're really excited that we've got 11 small groups starting. But we're actually more excited to see 15. To see 20, to see 22, to see it grow, to see it. We've already had conversations. The groups are actually kind of full, which is not a bad problem. It's a good thing. But we want to have our hearts positioned in a place where we're looking to grow spiritually, looking to be able to pull other people in to come alongside us and grow together. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go through these small group guidelines. And the purpose for doing this corporately is to just kind of get us all on the same page. So we're all talking the same language, so we all understand and know what to expect out of life group. And then we're going to break from here and we'll go into our groups, and you're actually going to go through them again and actually give you an opportunity to discuss them as a group, as well as some other questions to kind of generate some good conversation tonight. So small group guidelines. The first one is confidentiality. Keeping things that are shared in the group confidential builds trust and shows value to the person. What is said in the group stays in the group. It seems pretty self-explanatory, but just consider that. Like, we want this to be a safe place for everybody. We want it to be where you can come, you can be open, you can be real, and you can know that it's going to stay in this group. It's not going to leave the room. It's not going to leave the environment. It is a place. And I realize that this takes time to build trust, right? Like, it takes some time to build some relationships. And so really follow this confidentiality thing. Be really stress this a lot. The second thing is to listen. Let's value one another during the discussion by really listening to what is being shared. Try to avoid thinking about how you're going to respond or what you're going to say next. There's a common phrase that's going around right now, and it seems to be pretty loud in our culture these days. We listen to respond, not to understand. We're so fast to want to respond to things. And this next guideline actually speaks to that, and it's to pause. Allow a pause in conversation after someone shares. Give the person sharing the chance to finish, and the group the opportunity to consider what was shared before responding. So if you're practicing this listening thing, and you're not like just listening to respond right away and trying to think of what your next thing is, you can let the anxiety come down. There's going to be a pause moment, and that's okay. We want to actually develop that, which leads to the next guideline, which is silence. It's important to allow silence in the group as it provides an opportunity for someone to share and for a member in the group to process the topic or question being considered. I think this pause and silence thing, we don't like silence. Like, it's kind of awkward sometimes. Am I the only one that feels that? Like the silence comes and it's like we want to fill that space. We want to fill it. What ends up happening is we fill the space, and maybe other people haven't had a chance to process what they're thinking. Maybe the Holy Spirit's trying to speak, but nobody can hear it because you're too loud and you're talking too much. So if when we practice this silence thing, when we practice the pause, it actually allows people to process the conversation, process their thoughts, and allows the Holy Spirit to minister in that moment. We're not crowding that, and we let God do his thing. It's really remarkable when you start exercising it. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another to see it start manifesting itself in a group. So just be really intentional to allow. Now, I'm not talking like 5-minute moment of silence between each statement. That obviously isn't realistic. But there, you know what I mean? There's this thing of just rushing a conversation. You can let the conversation breathe, and you should. The next one is no cross-talk. Be considerate of others as they are sharing, no side conversations. That should, it seems like grade school type of rule, but it really is true. If there's a side conversation happening while somebody else is sharing, it really does send the message that you don't value what it is that they're talking about. So stay away from that. The next two go together, but they are two separate. The first is no rescuing. When people are sharing something deeply personal, there can be a tendency to try to make them feel better about themselves or the situation by providing an immediate condolences. This will often cause them to stop sharing, resist the temptation to rescue people. I've seen this a lot in small groups where somebody will share something. They'll be opening up. They'll be pouring their heart out. It's uncomfortable for everybody because you're uncomfortable for that person, right? They're being really real. You see they're hurting. You see that they're struggling. And what we want to do is we want to rescue that person from that moment. And so we will say stuff like, you know what, I've been through something just like that. And then we'll kick right into our own little story. Well, what just happened? The conversation just shifted about them and just shifted to be about you. And it's good, it's with good intention. It's not that it's not good intentions. It's just that it just took the moment away. So avoid rescuing somebody. You can ask for permission. It's one thing to put your arm around somebody and just be like, and just comfort them. And you can ask for permission to say, you know what, can I share something with you? Sometimes I think we feel like we have to say something, and we don't actually have the right to say it. Which leads to the next one, which is no fixing, which is, I think, a big one. I think when we talked about this as leaders, it's a big one in marriages. I think as husbands, we try to fix things. Our wives come with their day, and they tell us about all their problems, and at least this is me anyway. Maybe I'm the only guy that does this, but and I want to fix all of Carrie's problems. And you do this differently, you do this, and she's going, wait a minute, I never asked you to give me suggestions. I was just venting a little bit. So no fixing. Try to hear what people are sharing without trying to fix them. If they want your advice, they will ask for it. You may want to take time later to ask if you may offer some advice. I've seen this play out well as well, where I was actually sharing something. I had a question, I was struggling with something, and somebody came to me after the group and actually asked for permission. Hey, can I share something with you that might be helpful for you? And it was. But I really appreciated the approach. It was a later moment. It wasn't right in the group. It allowed me to have a good conversation with this person, and they offered some really great advice. But that would be the next thing, is they asked for permission, and then they humbly gave it. It wasn't you should do this. It was you should consider this. And we approach it very differently than just that trying to fix somebody right away, trying to rescue them right away. You wait for someone to ask you for permission, or you ask for permission yourself before you start pushing those things on somebody. The second one is sharing. Be sensitive about the amount of time you share. I realize we live in northern Minnesota, and stories can go on forever. This is what it looks like. We see this all the time. I went to go see Jimmy John at the so-and-so house, and that house that's across from Billy Bob and his place, that's so-and-so's uncle. I went there on Thursday. No, it was Friday. No, it was 6:30, maybe it was 6:25. And we spent so much time talking about all these things that really don't matter. And if everybody does that in the group, we've already talked, we got larger groups. We're sitting around anywhere between 8 to 12, sometimes 14. If everybody talks with that level of information that is pointless information for the most part, it's just going to get stressful for everybody. Not everybody's going to have an opportunity to share. So be really mindful. I'm not telling you not to be real, not to be yourself. We want that. But be respectful and consider what your long responses mean for the rest of the group. It does affect the whole group. So, and the other thing is you don't have to have a response to everything. Sometimes there's this idea you've got to have a response, you've got to know something. Sometimes you don't have to speak everything that comes to your mind. So some of us struggle with that, some of us don't, but be aware of that. Be self-aware is the next one, of how you are personally affecting the environment through your words, of course, but also your actions and your nonverbal communication. So you are communicating something whether you're speaking or not. So if you're sitting there and you're just completely out of it, and you're going to send a message that you're unapproachable, that nobody wants anything, So just be self-aware of how you're coming off to the people around you with how you speak, your tone. I mean, we've probably all done that study or heard it before. What you say, the words that actually come out of your mouth, actually communicate a very small portion of what you're saying. It's how you say it. It's the tone you say it. It's the facial expression. All of those things. Be self-aware of those things. The next one is I statements. During small groups, we want to hear your personal thoughts and perspectives. Using I statements to answer discussion questions allows you to speak for yourself rather than generalizing by using terms such as you or they, them, the church, us or we. So just be careful. When you're sharing things, make it I statements. This is what I think. When you generalize, what it does is it actually brings less validity to what you're saying. It actually brings it down because you don't know what everybody else is thinking entirely. And so what you're saying actually diminishes in truth when you start generalizing. Same with absolutes. When you start using absolutes, it becomes less and less true. And so avoid those kind of things and stick to I statements when you're talking about those type of things. And the last one is fight for relationship. Relationship reaches a whole new level when conflict is resolved in a healthy manner. Even when conflict or sin issues arise between group members, commit to fight for relationship and discuss the struggle with the person you are in conflict with, or seek wise counsel. I heard this said, you don't really know how good of a friendship you have with somebody until you have gone through conflict with them, until you have had a disagreement. Where you learn how they're going to respond. So conflict is not the end of the world. In fact, it can actually build stronger relationships if it's done appropriately. The truth is, we're all human. We all say things that aren't smart. We all say things that hurt people. Sometimes it's intentionally, sometimes it's not intentional. And it is okay to try to resolve, and in fact, it should be resolved. We should be looking to resolve those type of issues and conflict amongst each other. And if you need help, come talk to the pastors, come talk to an elder, talk to your leader. We want to resolve these things. We don't want to allow them to build up brick by brick, because if you just leave those undealt with, they build up until eventually you have this really strong wall that is a problem in not just one relationship, but probably multiples. So let's be intentional about addressing these things quickly in a timely manner, but in a healthy manner. So that's the rules. Those are the guidelines. They're pretty simple. They're pretty straightforward. You're going to go to your group. You're going to discuss them again. I know that seems redundant, but really what we want to make sure is that everybody's thinking the same way, so that if somebody who if you end up being that person that's talking too much, we can actually reference back and go, hey, remember when we were talking about that oversharing thing? Or remember when we talked about that the we statements and the I statements, or rescuing. So we've got a reference point so everybody can kind of know where we're coming from. So it's really good. The last thing I want to encourage you with is this. This is really good. I'm really excited about what God's going to do, but you will get out of this what you put into it. If you go into your life group and you're already kind of have this humdrum attitude and you're not real excited about pressing in, you might have this self-fulfilling prophecy where you end up going home disappointed. But if you lean into this and you press into the Lord and you allow relationship to be developed in your life, I'm confident you will see good things. There will be growth. And sometimes that growth might come through conflict. Sometimes it might come through challenges. But growth will happen. I'm confident in that. So